The weight of the crystal champagne flutes made my hands tremble as I navigated the Velvet Room's crimson-lit dining room, the restaurant's sultry ambiance doing nothing to soften the exhaustion carved into my features. Saturday nights were always pandemonium, a dangerous symphony of whispered conversations about acquisitions and territory disputes I pretended not to understand, the scent of aged whiskey and Cuban cigars that would cling to my black cocktail uniform long after my shift ended. 8 months of working triple shifts had left hollows beneath my amber eyes that even my carefully applied concealer couldn't disguise. "Table 9 needs the Macallan 25, Cleo snapped as I passed the bar, barely glancing up from the old-fashioned she was muddling. I nodded, though she'd already turned away. Nobody ever truly saw me here. I was just another waitress, gliding between tables, invisible, until someone needed a refill. That invisibility had become both my sanctuary and my cage since Julian had vanished, leaving me drowning in 6-figure medical bills for my 6-year-old daughter Rue's treatments and a debt that felt like a noose tightening around my throat. That's when I first noticed him. He hadn't been there when my shift began, table 5. The private alcove, draped in shadows and unofficially reserved, though never explicitly marked as such, had been empty all evening until I turned from delivering appetizers and found it suddenly occupied. 3 men in immaculately tailored suits sat in strategic formation, 2 facing outward, surveying the room with the practiced vigilance of apex predators, and him positioned at the center of the curved velvet banquette, his back to the wall. Even from across the room, something about him made my pulse spike. He couldn't have been older than 35, with sharp cheekbones and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. His dark hair swept back from his forehead, revealing eyes like black diamonds that seemed to absorb the restaurant's amber light rather than reflect it, unlike the nervous energy crackling from the business executives at my tables. He radiated a coiled stillness that felt predatory, like a serpent, deciding whether to strike or simply watch its prey stumble closer. Like the moment before a storm breaks, Cleo materialized at my shoulder, startling me. "Cassian's here. She," whispered a tremor in her voice. "I'd never heard before. The owner wants you to serve his table tonight." I blinked, confused. "Why not? You or Marcus? The senior servers always handled the VIP section." "Just do it. Verity?" Cleo's face went pale. "And for God's sake, don't screw this up. People don't get second chances with Cassian Thorne." I smoothed down my black apron, suddenly hyper-aware of the lipstick stain on my collar and the way my honey-blonde bun had begun to unravel after 9 hours on my feet. Approaching table 5 felt like wading through deep water. The air grew denser with each step, charged with an electricity that made my skin prickle. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, proud that my voice emerged steady, despite the way my heart hammered against my ribs. "Welcome to the Velvet Room. May I start you with something to drink?" I managed, keeping my eyes fixed on the leather-bound menu rather than the man whose presence seemed to consume all the oxygen in our corner of the restaurant. The 2 guards barely acknowledged me, but Cassian Thorne looked up, and the full weight of his attention hit me like a physical blow. "Bring us a bottle of the Armand de Brignac Rosé," he said, his voice smoke and velvet with an edge of steel that made something low in my stomach tighten. "And 3 glasses." His gaze lingered on my face, traveling from the loose strands of honey-blonde hair at my temple down to the name tag pinned to my uniform. "Verity." He said my name like he was tasting it, deciding if he liked the flavor. I nodded, retreating on unsteady legs toward the bar where Cleo was already pouring top-shelf vodka for table 9. That's when I noticed him, a middle-aged man in a gray suit at table 9, unremarkable except for the way his phone was angled toward Cassian's alcove, the lens catching the light. I'd seen enough true crime documentaries with Rue to recognize surveillance when I saw it. My breath caught as I placed him. Agent Silas Graves, the federal prosecutor who'd been all over the news for his Obsidian Circle takedown attempts. Cleo grabbed the champagne bucket, heading for table 5, oblivious to the trap she was walking into. Without thinking, I intercepted her. "I've got it," I said, perhaps too sharply, snatching the bottle from her hands. She blinked in surprise, but didn't argue as I made my way back across the dining room, my heart hammering so hard I was certain Cassian could hear it. As I presented the bottle, I pulled my order pad from my apron, my hand moving before my brain could catch up and warn me against what I was doing. "You're being watched. Table 5. Federal." I scrawled the words, barely legible in my haste. Then as I leaned forward to pour Cassian's glass, I slid the folded note beneath the crystal ashtray at his elbow. Our fingers brushed for the briefest moment, and electricity shot up my arm. His obsidian eyes snapped to mine, narrowed with sudden, dangerous interest. "Will there be anything else?" I asked, stepping back before my trembling hands betrayed me. "Not yet," he replied, but his gaze never left my face as his brother Enzo, a younger version of Cassian with the same predatory stillness, casually lifted the ashtray and palmed the note. I watched from behind the bar as Enzo read it, whispered something to Cassian, whose expression remained carved from granite. One of the guards stood, buttoning his jacket as he made his way toward the restrooms, passing directly behind Agent Graves's table. 10 minutes later, Graves was gone, his half-finished old-fashioned abandoned, his surveillance equipment nowhere to be seen. I served my other tables on autopilot, hyper-aware of every movement at table 5. When I finally approached to clear their barely touched appetizers, Cassian's hand caught my wrist. His touch was surprisingly warm, his grip firm but not painful. Yet, I froze, my pulse racing beneath his fingers like a trapped bird. "Thank you for the excellent service, Verity." His thumb brushed over my pulse point, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'll be seeing you again." It wasn't a question, or even a suggestion. It was a declaration that sent equal parts fear and something far more dangerous spiraling through me. The leather check presenter sat on the table when I returned to collect it. Inside was $2,000 in crisp hundreds, far more than their $600 bill required. Scrawled across the bottom in bold ink was a phone number and 2 words: "Call me." Tucked behind the cash was a matte black business card embossed with a single name: Cassian Thorne. No title, no company, just a promise. I should have thrown it away, should have reported the suspicious interaction to management. Instead, I slipped it into my apron pocket where it burned against my hip for the remainder of my shift. It was past 2 a.m. when I finally left through the service entrance, my feet screaming in protest as I walked the 3 blocks toward the bus stop. The street was deserted, storefronts dark and shuttered. The sound of footsteps behind me made my spine stiffen, but when I turned, no one was there, just shadows and the distant wail of a siren. "We need to talk." The voice came from the alley to my left, and Cassian Thorne stepped into the amber glow of the streetlight, still immaculate in his tailored suit despite the late hour. His eyes found mine in the darkness, and I knew with absolute certainty that my life had just fractured into before and after this moment. "I don't know you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I should go." "You should," Cassian agreed, his head tilting slightly as he studied me in the dim light. "But you won't, because you want to know why I'm here, and because you're too exhausted to run, even if your instincts are screaming at you to." He was right, and I hated him for it. My feet ached, my mind was foggy with exhaustion, and the weight of 8 months of drowning had finally pulled me under. "What do you want?" "To talk. In private." He gestured toward a sleek black Mercedes Maybach idling at the curb, its engine purring like a contented predator. 5 minutes of your time, Verity. That's all I'm asking." Every rational thought told me to refuse, to walk away, to catch the bus and forget this night ever happened. Instead, I found myself following him to the car, sliding into leather seats so soft they felt obscene compared to the threadbare furniture in my apartment. The door closed with a whisper of German engineering, sealing us in a cocoon of silence. Cassian settled beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my head swim. "Ruvain," he began, and ice flooded my veins at the sound of my daughter's name in his mouth. 6 years old, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, currently in remission after her second round of treatment at St. Vincent's Hospital. You live at 412 Ashford Street, apartment 3B. Your ex-husband, Julian Kincaid, disappeared 8 months ago, leaving you with approximately $180,000 in medical debt. He paused, his dark eyes holding mine. You take your coffee black with 2 sugars, and you haven't bought new shoes in over a year despite the hole in your left sole. My hands trembled in my lap. How do you... I make it my business to know everything about people who interest me, he said simply. And you, Verity Vane, have become very interesting. I warned you about a federal agent, I whispered. That doesn't give you the right to invade my privacy. No, he agreed, but it did make me curious enough to look into why a struggling waitress would risk herself to protect a stranger. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Your daughter's outstanding medical bills were paid this afternoon. $150,000 cleared. The hospital won't be contacting you about collections anymore. The world tilted beneath me. What are you talking about? I took care of it. He spoke casually, as though he'd merely bought me coffee rather than erased debt that would have crushed me for the rest of my life. Consider it a thank you for your discretion tonight. I can't accept that, I said automatically, though relief threatened to overwhelm me. I don't need charity. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. It's not charity, Verity. It's an exchange of favors. You did something for me, and I did something for you. He leaned closer, and I caught the scent of whiskey on his breath. Do you know who that man was? The one watching me? I nodded slowly. Agent Silas Graves. He's been investigating organized crime. He's been trying to build a case against my family for years, Cassian said, his tone conversational despite discussing federal investigations. They're particularly interested in my movements right now. Had you not warned me, I might have discussed certain sensitive matters at that table. The consequences would have been significant. Are you telling me you're under federal investigation? I asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear him say it. I am. His directness was somehow more terrifying than a lie would have been. But Agent Graves won't be a problem anymore. Why are you telling me this? The question emerged as barely a whisper. Why did you pay Rue's bills? His hand moved to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. Because you protected me. I protect what's mine. I'm not yours, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. His smile was slow, dangerous, absolutely devastating. Not yet. The car pulled to a stop outside my building, its crumbling brick facade a harsh reminder of the gulf between our worlds. We'll speak again soon, Cassian said, opening the door for me. It wasn't a question. I stumbled into my apartment, checked on Rue, sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with each breath, and collapsed onto my bed, still wearing my uniform. The next morning, a knock at my door revealed a courier with a sleek package. Inside was a new phone, expensive and programmed with a single contact. Cassian. A cream cardstock invitation accompanied it, embossed with gold lettering. Dinner. Saturday, 8 p.m. A car will collect you. Before I could process any of it, my phone rang. My old phone. St. Vincent's Hospital. Ms. Vane? This is Dr. Eris Thorne's office calling to confirm Rue's appointment tomorrow with the specialist. We have an opening that rarely becomes available. My fingers tightened around the phone. I didn't schedule an appointment. A pause. According to our records, Mr. Thorne arranged everything personally. He's one of the foremost pediatric oncologists in the country. This is quite an opportunity. I stared at the black phone in the courier's box, at Cassian's name glowing on its screen, and felt the trap close around me with velvet-lined teeth. I called the number 3 times before my courage held long enough to let it ring. He answered on the first tone as though he'd been waiting. Verity. Just my name, but hearing it in his voice made something flutter dangerously in my chest. "What's the Rousseau Foundation?" I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. "And why is Dr. Eris Thorne suddenly available for my daughter?" "Have dinner with me tonight," he replied smoothly. "I'll explain everything." "Explain now." Some conversations shouldn't happen over phone lines. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice had gentled. "Please, 8 o'clock. I'll send a car." The restaurant occupied the entire penthouse of a glass tower downtown, its floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city lights like scattered diamonds. A maitre d' led me to a private alcove where Cassian waited, devastating in a black suit that probably cost more than my annual rent. "You came," he said, standing as I approached. "I wasn't certain you would." "I need answers." I remained standing, refusing the chair he offered. "No more games." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Your ex-husband, Julian Kincaid, worked for an organization called the Obsidian Circle. Have you heard of them?" The name sent ice through my veins. "The art theft syndicate. They're all over the news. Art theft, money laundering, contract killings. They're diversified." Cassian pulled out a tablet, swiping to reveal a photo of Julian at what looked like an auction house, shaking hands with a silver-haired man I didn't recognize. Julian wasn't just an acquisitions specialist. He was their primary launderer, moving approximately $25 million through legitimate auction sales over 4 years. "That's impossible," I whispered, but fragments of memory were already surfacing. Julian's late-night phone calls, the cash he'd tell me not to ask about, weekend trips to cities I'd never visited. 8 months ago, Julian disappeared. So did the money. Cassian's dark eyes held mine. "The Obsidian Circle believes you helped him steal it. They've been watching you, Verity, waiting to see if you'd lead them to their fortune." The restaurant spun around me. "I don't know anything about any money." "I believe you." He swiped to another photo, and my breath stopped. Dr. Vance, Rue's oncologist, the man I'd trusted with my daughter's life, sat across a table from 2 men in a dimly lit restaurant. "But they don't. They've had someone close to you this entire time, monitoring Rue's condition, your movements, waiting." I sank into the chair, my legs refusing to support me. "Dr. Vance is reporting everything to them. Has been since shortly after Julian vanished." Cassian's voice remained steady, clinical, but I could see rage banked behind his eyes. "They're using your daughter as leverage." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, fighting the panic clawing at my throat. "What do you want from me?" Something dark flickered across his face. 7 years ago, the Obsidian Circle killed my younger brother. Luca was 23, trying to negotiate a territory dispute. They executed him in the street like he was nothing. His hands clenched into fists. "I've spent every day since building the resources to destroy them. Your situation presented an opportunity." Understanding crashed over me like cold water. "I'm bait." "You're under my protection," he corrected sharply. "Which means you're untouchable in this city. The Obsidian Circle knows that now. What they don't know is that I've been using their interest in you to track their operations. Every person they've assigned to watch you has led me back to another piece of their network." "Including Dr. Vance," I said, the betrayal burning in my chest. who has been feeding them carefully curated misinformation for 3 weeks. At my instruction, a cold smile curved his lips. He was quite cooperative once he understood the alternatives. I should have been terrified, should have run screaming from this man who spoke so casually of coercion and revenge. Instead, I felt something close to relief knowing someone with Cassian's resources was on my side. What happens now? The Obsidian Circle has given you 10 days to produce the money or face consequences. His expression hardened. I can offer you 2 choices. I have the resources to make you and Rue disappear. New identities, new city, enough money to start over. You'd never see me again. Or you stay under my protection. Let me use their interest in you to finally bring them down. Rue continues her treatment with Dr. Eris Thorne. You keep your life, and we end this together. He leaned forward, and I saw the violence lurking beneath his polished exterior, but also something raw and genuine. I won't let them hurt you, Verity. Either of you. I need time, I whispered, my mind reeling from everything he'd revealed. His jaw tightened, frustration flashing across his features. Time is a luxury we don't have. They're watching Rue's school. The deadline accelerates every day you don't cooperate. His hand covered mine on the table, warm and solid. Choose, Verity. But choose soon. I returned to work the next day, determined to pretend nothing had changed. But once you see the cage, you can't unsee it. The man at the bus stop who never actually boarded. The woman in designer sunglasses who appeared at Rue's school drop-off 3 days in a row, always watching, never picking up a child. The sedan with tinted windows that idled across from our building for hours before disappearing into the night. They were everywhere, and I was supposed to simply live my life while predators circled. The phone Cassian had sent rang every evening at 9 after Rue was asleep. What started as brief check-ins, any unusual activity? Are you safe? Stretched into hour-long conversations that left me breathless and confused. Tell me about the art gallery, he said one night, his voice warm through the speaker. What did you curate? Contemporary pieces mostly, emerging artists who deserved recognition. I found myself smiling at the memory. There was this painter, Michaela Chen. She did these massive canvases of urban decay that somehow felt hopeful. I gave her first solo show. What happened to her? She's in the MoMA now. Pride and grief mingled in my chest. I see her name sometimes and remember when I used to be someone who created beauty instead of just surviving. You're still that person, Verity. The certainty in his voice made me want to believe him. You're just fighting a different kind of battle right now. These conversations terrified me more than the Watchers did because they made Cassian feel human, made me forget the violence I'd seen lurking behind his eyes. The package arrived on Thursday, a small velvet box containing a delicate silver bracelet. Rue's eyes lit up when she opened it. It's so pretty. She turned it over in her small hands, examining the tiny charm shaped like a compass rose. There's a special button, I explained. Following the instructions Cassian had texted, if you're ever scared or need help when Mommy isn't around, you press here. Like a superhero signal? Her imagination was already spinning stories. Exactly like that. 2 hours later, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, my phone exploded with Cassian's ringtone. I answered to find his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Where is she? Is Rue safe? My team is en route. She's fine, I interrupted, confused. She's in her room, playing. Mommy? Rue appeared in the doorway, the bracelet clutched in her hand. I was just practicing. You know, in case of emergencies. Understanding dawned. Cassian, she's testing it. False alarm. The exhale on the other end was shaky. Put her on. I handed Rue the phone, watching as her face transformed with delight. Hi, Mr. Thorne. Did you get my signal? It worked super fast. I know, I won't press it unless it's real. Okay, I promise. Bye. She skipped back to her room and I lifted the phone to my ear. You answered in 30 seconds. I'll always answer, he said simply, and the weight of that promise settled over me like a blanket. The building's lobby suddenly had a doorman, a man named Marcus with military bearing and eyes that cataloged every person who entered. Fresh groceries appeared outside our door twice weekly. The flickering hallway light was replaced. Our locks were quietly upgraded to something that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. At work, Cleo cornered me by the bar. Everyone knows you're Cassian Thorne's girl now, she said, her voice low and urgent. Be careful, V. Men like him don't let go once they've claimed something. But it was Mrs. Calloway, my elderly neighbor, who made my instincts scream. She'd always been sweet, bringing Rue cookies and asking about her health. Now her questions had an edge. How's your new friend treating you, dear? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The one who sends the cars? Must be serious if he's taking care of your bills. Just a friend helping out, I said carefully. Of course. Her gaze lingered too long. You know, if you ever need someone to talk to about complicated situations, I'm here. That night, I dreamed of Cassian's hands on my skin, his voice whispering my name in the darkness. I woke tangled in sheets, pulse racing, hating myself for wanting a man whose world was built on violence. The knock came at 7 a.m. on Saturday. Agent Silas Graves stood in my doorway, FBI badge gleaming in his hand, his expression carved from stone. Ms. Vane, we need you to come downtown, now. 2 more agents materialized behind him. We have questions about your relationship with Cassian Thorne. Mrs. Calloway watched from her doorway as the agents led me out, and in that moment, I understood. The cookies, the concerned questions, the sudden interest in my new friend. All of it calculated, all of it a trap. The federal building was all concrete and fluorescent lighting, designed to strip away any sense of comfort. They put me in a windowless room with a metal table and 3 chairs, then left me there for an hour before Graves finally entered, accompanied by a female agent who introduced herself as Chen. Coffee? Graves offered, setting a paper cup in front of me. I want to call someone about my daughter. She'll be getting home from school. Your neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, has agreed to watch Rue, Chen said smoothly. She's quite fond of the girl. The emphasis on neighbor made my stomach turn. They wanted me to know about the betrayal, wanted me off balance. How long have you been working with Cassian Thorne? Graves began, settling into the chair across from me. I'm not working with anyone. He paid some medical bills, that's all. Graves smiled without humor and slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs. Cassian entering my building at midnight, his hand at the small of my back as we left the penthouse restaurant, me getting into his car outside the Velvet Room. Someone had been documenting everything. 8 phone calls in the past 4 days, Chen added, consulting her notes. Each lasting over an hour. $150,000 in medical debt cleared. A consultation with Dr. Eris Thorne, one of the country's most exclusive pediatric oncologists, arranged within 24 hours. She leaned forward. That's not just helping, Ms. Vane. That's cultivation. Cultivation of what? A new money launderer, Graves said flatly. Your ex-husband Julian worked for the Obsidian Circle for 4 years, moving millions through art auction fronts. He disappeared with $25 million. Now suddenly you're entangled with Cassian Thorne, who operates in the same circles, and money is flowing through your accounts again. I haven't laundered anything. My voice cracked. I'm a waitress barely keeping my head above water. You're a former art gallery curator with extensive knowledge of auction houses and provenance documentation. Chen interrupted. The exact skill set needed for high-level art fraud. Julian taught you well. Julian taught me nothing except how to survive his lies. They questioned me for 8 hours, circling back to the same accusations from different angles. Where was Julian hiding? Had I been in contact with him? What services was I providing Cassian in exchange for the medical payments? They showed me bank records, phone logs, security footage, building a case that made me look complicit in crimes I didn't even understand. "Here's what I think happened," Graves said as evening shadows darkened the small window high on the wall. "Julian stole from the obsidian circle and ran." Cassian Thorne saw an opportunity, a vulnerable woman with the right background and motivations. He pays your bills, makes you dependent on him, and slowly recruits you to finish what Julian started. That's not true. Then explain the money, explain the phone calls, explain why a known criminal is suddenly your knight in shining armor. His voice hardened. Because Cassian Thorne doesn't help people, Ms. Vane. He uses them. And when he's done with you, we'll be building a case that puts you away for 30 years. Your daughter will be grown before you see her again. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Are you charging me with something? Not today. Graves stood, sliding a business card across the table. But when this goes sideways, and it will, call me. Cooperation now could mean the difference between prison and witness protection. They released me into the dusk with no phone, no wallet, no way to reach Rue or confirm she was safe. I stood on the federal building steps, trying not to panic, when a familiar black Mercedes pulled to the curb. Enzo stepped out, opening the rear door. Boss says get in. I practically fell into the back seat. Cassian sat in shadow, his jaw tight with barely restrained fury. Rue is safe at my estate, he said without preamble, his voice like granite. Pack nothing. You're not going back. Cassian's estate sprawled behind iron gates and stone walls that looked medieval in their imposing solidity. Guards patrolled the perimeter with military precision, and cameras tracked our progress up the winding drive. But inside, the fortress revealed a different face. Warm woods, soft lighting, art that transformed hallways into galleries. It felt like a home, not a prison, which somehow made it more dangerous. A dark-haired woman met us at the door, her smile genuine as she embraced me like we were old friends. Verity, I'm Sophia, Enzo's wife. She linked her arm through mine, guiding me inside. Rue is already making herself at home in the pool. I hope you don't mind. We found a swimsuit that fits. Through the glass doors, I could see my daughter laughing as she splashed in an indoor pool that looked like it belonged in a resort. The sound of her joy cracked something open in my chest. She's safe here, Sophia said softly, reading my expression. We all are. The first 4 days passed in a surreal haze of safety I'd forgotten existed. Rue ate 3 meals a day prepared by Cassian's private chef, her cheeks filling out, color returning to her skin. She ran through the gardens without exhaustion, played without the constant shadow of fear. I watched her transform and felt my resolve weakening with every laugh, every moment of peace. Cassian was different here too. The dangerous edge softened when Rue was near. I found them in the library on the 3rd evening, Rue perched on his lap as he taught her chess, his large hands gentle as he showed her how each piece moved. The queen is the most powerful, he explained. She can move anywhere she wants. But the king? He's vulnerable. He needs protection. Like Mommy protects me? Rue asked. Something flickered across Cassian's face. Exactly like that. Later, I watched from the doorway as he read her a bedtime story, his deep voice rendering "Where the Wild Things Are" into something magical. When he noticed me, he didn't stop, just held my gaze over Rue's blonde head until I had to look away from the intensity. He lost his younger brother 7 years ago, Sophia told me one afternoon as we watched Rue paint in the sunroom. Luca was caught in crossfire during an obsidian circle operation. There were children nearby. Luca threw himself in front of them. Her eyes glistened. He saved 3 kids that day. Cassian has been trying to save everyone since. The late-night conversations became my addiction. After Rue slept, I'd find Cassian in his study or on the terrace, and we'd talk until dawn threatened the horizon. He asked about my gallery work, the artists I'd championed, the dreams I'd abandoned when Julian's lies had shattered my life. "Show me," he said one night, pushing a sketch pad and charcoal across the table. My hands moved before my mind could object, capturing the sharp angles of his face, the way shadow and light played across his features. When I finished, he studied it in silence before carefully setting it aside. "I'm keeping this," he said quietly. "It's just a sketch. It's how you see me." His dark eyes found mine. "I want to remember that." The tension between us had been building like a storm. Stolen glances across the dinner table, his hand lingering at the small of my back as we walked the gardens, the charged silence when we found ourselves alone. I felt it in the way his gaze followed me, in how my breath caught when he entered a room. I was falling for him, for a man whose hands were stained with violence, whose world was built on secrets and blood. And I couldn't make myself care about the danger anymore. The crash of glass shattering jerked me from sleep. My door burst open, and Cassian stood there in tactical gear, gun drawn, his expression transformed into something cold and lethal. "Stay down," he commanded. "They found us." Alarms shrieked through the house. Shouting erupted from somewhere below. My heart seized. "Rue! Sophia has her in the safe room." He moved to the window, weapon raised. "Julian surfaced 3 hours ago in Monaco. The obsidian circle just tried to breach the perimeter." His jaw clenched as gunfire cracked in the distance. "It's starting, Verity, and there's no going back now." By dawn, the perimeter was secured. 2 bodies lay covered in the courtyard, obsidian circle operatives who'd never make it home. A 3rd man sat bound in Cassian's basement, blood trickling from his split lip, defiance burning in his eyes despite knowing what came next. "You don't have to watch this," Cassian said, his hand on the security room door. But I did. If I was going to stay in his world, I needed to see all of it. Not just the gentleman who read bedtime stories, but the predator who'd built an empire on calculated violence. The interrogation lasted 20 minutes. Cassian didn't raise his voice, didn't lose control. He simply applied pressure with surgical precision until the man broke, words spilling out like blood from a wound. I watched through the security feed, my hands clenched in my lap, as Cassian extracted every piece of information with terrifying efficiency. When he emerged, there was blood on his knuckles. "Julian is in Monaco," he said, washing his hands in the bathroom sink as though discussing the weather. "Living under the name Marcus Brennan with his mistress Rebecca. He has approximately 20 million of the original 25. The rest he spent or gambled away." "And the leader?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Who runs the obsidian circle?" Something dark flickered across his face. "Someone from your past at the gallery. The captive wouldn't give a name, but he confirmed it's someone you knew, someone you trusted." The betrayal cut deeper than Julian's abandonment. My gallery colleagues had been my family once. "I could give Julian to them," Cassian continued, leaning against the doorframe. "It's what they want. Their money and their vengeance. They'd tear him apart slowly, make an example. The threat to you and Rue disappears. But," I could hear the unspoken alternative, "but you wouldn't be able to live with yourself." His dark eyes held mine. "You're not built for that kind of blood, Verity. It's one of the things He stopped, jaw clenching. "I can cover the missing 5 million. Return the full amount. Negotiate peace." That's millions of dollars, I whispered. Why would you do that? He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness despite the violence still staining his knuckles. Because somewhere between the moment you slid that warning under my glass and watching you fight for your daughter with everything you had, I fell in love with you. The confession hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. Cassian, I know what I am, he continued, his voice rough. I know the darkness I carry, but you make me want to be something better. You and Rue. You've become everything I didn't know I needed. I should have stepped back, should have remembered the interrogation I'd just witnessed, the bodies in the courtyard, the world of violence he inhabited. Instead, I pulled him down and kissed him. It was desperate and fierce and inevitable, months of tension igniting into something that consumed us both. His hands tangled in my hair, mine gripping his shoulders as though he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. He tasted like whiskey and danger and promises I shouldn't believe but wanted desperately to trust. Verity, he breathed against my lips, his forehead pressed to mine. I need to know you're choosing this, choosing me, all of me. I'm terrified, I admitted. But yes, I choose. Alarms shattered the moment. Cassian's expression shifted instantly to lethal focus as Enzo's voice crackled through his earpiece. Boss, we've got company. FBI raid. They have a warrant for Julian Kincaid's extradition. They're breaching the gate now. Cassian's hand found mine, steady and sure. Stay close to me. We descended to the main floor where his security team had already assembled. Through the windows, I could see black SUVs converging on the estate. Then Enzo appeared, escorting a man in handcuffs. Older, grayer than I remembered, but unmistakably Julian. His eyes met mine across the foyer, and something like regret flickered across his face before Agent Graves strode through the door, badge raised, a dozen agents fanning out behind him. Cassian Thorne, Graves announced, his gaze taking in the scene. The guards. The obvious preparation, Julian in custody. Interesting timing. Cassian's hand tightened around mine as we stood united, facing the convergence of past and present. Agent Graves, we've been expecting you. We have a warrant for Julian Kincaid's arrest and extradition, Graves said, his agents spreading through the foyer with weapons drawn. You can hand him over peacefully, or we can make this difficult. I'm not the one who makes things difficult, Agent Graves. Cassian's voice was silk over steel. I called you. Julian was delivered to my estate 2 hours ago by my extraction team in Monaco. I'm simply waiting for all interested parties to arrive before we negotiate terms. All parties? Graves's eyes narrowed. What are you? The front gate alarm sounded again. Through the windows, 3 black SUVs approached. These unmarked and moving with military precision. My stomach dropped as they disgorged a dozen men in tactical gear, and at the center of them, Dr. Vance, I breathed, watching Rue's oncologist stride toward the house with the confidence of someone who'd orchestrated everything from the beginning. But it was the woman beside him who made my world tilt. Tall, elegant, with silver-streaked black hair I'd recognize anywhere. Celeste Rousseau, I whispered. My mentor from the gallery. Your mentor? Cassian's grip on my hand tightened. She taught me everything about provenance and authentication. Understanding crashed over me. She ran the auction house front, the one Julian used for laundering. Celeste entered the foyer like she owned it, her cold eyes sweeping over the assembled forces. What a fascinating tableau. The FBI, the notorious Cassian Thorne, my disappointing former protege, and the man who stole $25 million. Her gaze landed on Julian. Hello, darling. You've led us on quite a chase. This is a federal crime scene, Graves started, but Celeste's laugh cut him off. Please, Agent Graves. We both know you don't have enough to charge me. I'm simply here to collect what's mine. Her eyes found me. I had such hopes for you, Verity. You had real talent. Such a waste. Where's my daughter? I demanded, the only thing that mattered in this moment. The child is secure, Cassian said quietly. Sophia has her in the panic room. No one gets to her without going through me first. How touching. Dr. Vance. No, Celeste's brother, I realized now, seeing the resemblance, pulled a weapon. But you're outnumbered. Thorne. Am I? Cassian's smile was predatory. He nodded to Enzo, who activated a screen on the wall. The captured operative's confession played, names, locations, operations, all of it recorded in damning detail. I also have $25 million ready to wire to an account of your choosing. Your money, with interest, in exchange for walking away from Verity and Rue permanently. And what do you get? Celeste's eyes narrowed. She gets nothing, Graves interjected. Because I'm arresting her for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. He pulled out his phone. That confession gives me everything I need for a warrant. The standoff crystallized. FBI on one side, Obsidian Circle on the other, Cassian and I caught in the middle with Julian as the prize everyone wanted. The air felt electric with violence waiting to erupt. It was Dr. Vance who broke first. He lunged for me, weapon raised, perhaps thinking he could use me as leverage. He moved fast, but Cassian moved faster. The gunshot cracked through the foyer, and Dr. Vance crumpled, blood spreading across marble. Anyone else? Cassian's voice was ice. His gun trained on Celeste as Graves' agents swarmed the Obsidian Circle operatives. In the chaos that followed, deals were struck with brutal efficiency. Julian went with the FBI, already negotiating a plea deal that would see him imprisoned but alive. Cassian's lawyers produced the wire transfer confirmation, $25 million plus $2 million interest, deposited into an account that Graves immediately froze. Celeste was cuffed and read her rights, her empire crumbling in real time. As the last FBI vehicle pulled away with its cargo of criminals, Graves paused at the door. Ms. Vane, I can still offer witness protection, new life, new identity, clean slate. Before I could answer, Cassian's voice was quiet at my shoulder. You could disappear, Verity. Be safe. Take Rue somewhere he can never find you. I looked at the man who'd paid my daughter's medical bills, who'd protected us with everything he had, who'd killed for me without hesitation. The man I'd fallen in love with despite every reason not to. I'm not running, I said, my hand finding Cassian's. Not anymore. I'm staying with you. 8 months later, the estate had transformed from fortress to home. The guards still patrolled, cameras still tracked the perimeter, but their presence felt like background music now, always there, rarely noticed. Rue ran through the gardens with the kind of wild abandon only healthy children possess, her laughter echoing off stone walls that no longer felt like a cage. The latest scans are remarkable, Dr. Eris Thorne said, closing the file with a satisfied smile. Full remission. The experimental treatment exceeded every projection. Rue is thriving. I clutched Cassian's hand as relief washed through me for the 100th time. My daughter had a future now, one that extended beyond hospital rooms and uncertain prognoses. What about Daddy? Rue had asked one evening as I tucked her in, her silver bracelet catching the lamplight. She still wore it religiously, even though she'd never needed to press the panic button again. Your daddy made some very bad choices, I'd explained carefully. He hurt people and took things that didn't belong to him. He's in a place where people go when they break important rules. He'll be there for a long time. 20 years, she'd said, matter-of-factly. She was too smart, heard too much. But we're safe now because of Cassian. Yes, baby. We're safe now. The Thorne Gallery opened 6 months after the standoff, occupying a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Cassian had handed me the keys with a simple directive: build something beautiful. I'd curated the space with the same passion I'd once poured into my work, showcasing emerging artists who deserved recognition. The opening night drew collectors and critics, and I'd stood in the center of it all, no longer invisible, no longer powerless. My reflection in the gallery windows showed a woman I barely recognized. Honey blonde hair falling in waves past my shoulders instead of pulled back in that severe waitress bun. Designer clothes that fit properly, chosen for beauty rather than practicality. But it was the confidence radiating from my amber eyes that marked the real transformation. I'd reclaimed myself, piece by piece, and built something stronger from the ruins. Cassian proposed on the anniversary of the night I'd warned him, returning us to the Velvet Room, now under new management after Celeste's arrest had revealed its connections to the Obsidian Circle. He'd led me to table 5, where a velvet box sat beside a bottle of Armand de Brignac rosé. "You saved my life that night," he'd said, sliding the diamond onto my finger. "Let me spend the rest of mine proving I'm worth saving." The wedding was planned for spring, when the garden would be in full bloom. Now, as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, we stood on the estate's rooftop terrace, the city sprawling below us like scattered jewels. Rue slept peacefully in her room, Sophia checking on her periodically, the security bracelet still on her wrist because she insisted it made her feel safe. Cassian poured champagne into crystal flutes, handing me one with a smile that still made my pulse quicken. "To unconventional families," he toasted. "To dangerous choices," I added, touching my glass to his. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me as we looked out over the city where our story had begun. "Any regrets?" I thought about the exhausted waitress who'd slid a warning note under a stranger's glass, about the terrified mother who'd gotten into a Mafia boss's car, about the woman who'd chosen love over safety, danger over disappearing. Not a single one. His lips found mine, gentle and sure, and I thought about how I'd warned the Mafia boss and he'd saved me. But somewhere along the dangerous path between that first warning and this moment, I'd saved him too, given him a reason to build something beyond revenge, to protect something more precious than territory. Some warnings lead to danger. Ours had led to salvation. And sometimes, the most dangerous choice is the only one worth making.